Nope.
To your point about them embracing DiVincenzo's game, he needed to have this game because Jalen Brunson, the National Player of the Year, the best player in college basketball according to all the awards this year, was in foul trouble and was not on from the field. It was Mikal Bridges and DiVincenzo that led him to the victory. To your point, though, about the dominant performance, now this is only the second team since the field has expanded to 64 teams that has won every game by at least a dozen points. Their average margin of victory was nearly 18 points. That's
outstanding.
And by the way, so for example, the team that had a better average margin of victory en route to a national championship was the Villanova team 2 years ago. And you might say, how could that be? They won a game. They won the national championship on a buzzer beater. That was a close game. Their Elite Eight game was a close game. That's because they had a couple 30 and 40-point wins mixed in there. Villanova was just beating everybody by 12 to 25 points. Like every game in this tournament, they were just so clearly the best team out there. And unlike Michigan, it's not taking anything away from Michigan, who had a fortuitous turn in the bracket. Until the national championship game, they hadn't played a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 seed. Villanova played about the toughest bracket you could play. It played true to seed. They played a 3 instead of a 2, but they didn't have any Cinderellas in their path. They were beating, after the first game against Radford, some of the best teams in college basketball, and they were winning these games by halftime.
So now Villanova goes, they've won 2 out of the last 3. What does this mean? Where do they sit big picture? Where does that fall for you?
Trying to build a program. I mean, continue. They might lose. They're going to definitely lose one guy. They could lose as many as 3 guys. If the freshman Spellman decides to go into the draft, you have to replace him. I'm not going to put them in the category as far as what do they do next. Are they for next year's? Because there's too many moving parts. There's too many freshmen coming in that we don't know about. But Jay Wright's team will be very, very good. They will be the favorite in the Big East again. When you look at Xavier, who they had problems with during the regular season, right?
Yep.
They lose their coach.
They beat Xavier twice in the regular season, but Xavier ended their streak of consecutive conference championships.
Yes. Now, Xavier, they're losing their coach, Cris to Louisville. Yep. So what will they do from there? But they are the preeminent team, especially on the East Coast. Like, I think they have a transfer coming over is going to help them. They can play. They got a big time. They got a top 15 freshman coming in, a 5-star recruit that's going to help them. But it really hinges on, does Brunson decide to come back for his 4th year? And does Spellman, the freshman, does he decide to go to the NBA? I think he should come back. That's where Villanova is going forward.
And DiVincenzo will come back. Like, I understand people
absolutely.
I mean, I think he might end up being an NBA player, but he will come back. He's not a leave early type of player. I'd be very surprised if Mikal Bridges go be a pro, go make money, go be a top 15 pick. There's no question about it. But as far as what this means for the program to me, you got to keep in mind who you're recruiting. Everyone you're recruiting at this point in college basketball was born in the year 2000 or later, right? That's how young these guys are. Since the year 2000 to now, only Duke, Carolina, and UConn have won more championships in these players' lifetimes. I'm not even including, obviously, their first one in '85. From 2000 to now, only Duke, Carolina, and UConn have a better winning history for when these players were alive to watch college basketball. Like, Villanova has won as many championships in the last 3 years as Kansas, one of the true blue bloods, has won in the last 60 years.
That's crazy.
They've won as many championships they've won more championships in the last 2 years in the last 3 years than UCLA has won in the last 30 years. Like, so the blue blood thing can kind of be fluid. And if you're a young recruit and you say, I want to play for a cool program, I want to play in a cool city, and I want to play for a program that has a winning history.
And a good coach.
And a great coach.
Sorry,
a great coach.
that out there.
That is, Villanova now is all of a sudden near, if not at the top of that list.
Right. They end up getting one of the recruits that left Arizona, with Arizona involved in the shoe scandal.
Right. Yep.
He's decided to come to Villanova. So the kids out there, their eyes are on Villanova as a viable option, one of the top programs.
We have Jason Capel coming on a little bit later. We'll talk more about this game. Just dominate, flat out, through the tournament, and then last night over Michigan.
Well, it was a continuum of the regular season. 14 weeks during the regular season, they were ranked #1, and they had a couple significant injuries where they had guys who missed time. So by the time they got to the Big East tournament, which we went to in Madison Square Garden, they were at full strength, and they had their bench was strong because the players had to spend more time. But the overall unselfishness of the senior, juniors, the sophomore, and the freshmen collectively buying into it because, as you mentioned, the star of the game last night is the sixth man of the year in the Big East. But they decided after 18 points in the first half, he's our best offensive threat in the second half. Let's make sure we get him some shots. So Jay Wright decides to insert him into the lineup after halftime, 52 seconds into the action. Yeah. So collectively, from a coaching staff, the way this roster has been built, and it's built for long-term success. So that's the reason why Villanova has been able to be so dominant, not only during the season, but in last night's championship game against Michigan.
Listen, I know we're going to talk about what this means big picture for the program and for Jay Wright, all that, but I want to talk about the actual game for a moment. This game was going just the way Michigan wanted it. In the beginning.
First 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, you could maybe extend that first 12, 14 minutes. Mo Wagner got off to a hot start early.
Yes.
There was some foul trouble for Villanova. Michigan's up 21-16. The important part there is not the 5-point lead, but it's the 37 combined total points at that point. It's like, oh, okay, it's a mucked it up, slow pace, low scoring. We could win this game 64-62. We could win this game in the 60s because in my opinion, Michigan never had a chance was to score 80 points. Like, they were never going to be able to have enough that if Villanova's offense got clicking, which is why DiVincenzo's fire at the end of the first half, they didn't continue the second half, that changed the whole game. Villanova didn't play that well in the first half. But because of a 21-7 run to close the first half, they're sitting there at halftime saying, we're up 9. Like, we're up 9 and haven't played our game. Jalen Brunson hasn't gotten going. Now, Brunson never got going. Didn't matter. Think about that. National Player of the Year. Never gets going. You're fine. Amari Spellman, your best freshman, doesn't really ever get going. You're fine. Like, Mikal Bridges got going in the second half of the game, and DiVincenzo was great the entirety of the game. They could just send waves at you, and that's why, I mean, CC, nobody came within a dozen points of them this whole tournament. They were thoroughly dominant start to finish. Yeah, no, it wasn't just this game. It was the tournament, it was the season, and now here's a team that wins 2 titles in 3 years with basically different teams. Yes. I mean, they've had a couple guys were here and there, but Jay Wright has managed to do this with almost 2 different teams in such a close period of time. How do you think they've been so successful? And last night, they've done it a number of different ways, but what Jay has done is the team has peaked at the right time. The Big East, it's a great test during the regular season. The Big East tournament, it's a great stage to get ready for the NCAA. When Jay sat here, he said that's what he likes about the Big East tournament because it is the next step to getting them ready for the NCAA. But the way he has his star players staged, he's got a senior, he's got a junior, he's got a sophomore, he's got bench players, he's got a freshman. So the way he's got it tiered that he can do this for a long time, that leads to their success. When you can have instant offense off the bench like that, that's what Michigan's coach said they didn't have an answer to. They had an answer for everything else, but Donte coming off the bench, they didn't have an answer for that. And listen, Michigan had a great run. They also had a fortuitous run. First team to ever get to a championship game without playing a single team that was ranked, that was a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 seed. Villanova had the opposite of that. Villanova's bracket stayed basically true to form. Yeah, they played a 3 seed instead of a 2 seed in the Elite 8 game, but they went to a 9, they had a 5, a 3, and then a 1, and then the best team on the whole left side of the bracket with 8 teams remaining, the best team left was Michigan. And that's who they draw in the championship game, and they dominate them. Just the second team ever to win all their tournament games by at least a dozen points. Their margin of victory was the 5th best ever in the history of the NCAA tournament. The right team won this year. And I said, Jenna, you and I talked, the NCAA tournament's really exciting. It's not always the most fair way to crown a champion. This year it was. This year it absolutely was. The best team for the length of the season won the championship. What does this do for Jay Wright and his legacy? Because now you have to talk about Jay Wright in the company of some of the other college basketball great coaches. I think it's the perfect time, and Nick, you do a great job of just, let's do a level set. Let's just go where college basketball is right now, who people think they are, who are the blue bloods, who are the cream of the crop. And right now, outside of Coach K, you can't mention someone that's better than Jay Wright or someone you would take over Jay Wright. And he's in the position, based on his style and his comfort, he's in his dream job. He's also, for recruit, he's also going to start getting more top 10 recruits. When you win 2 championships in 3 years, you are a blue blood. You are an elite of the elite. So I think it's now time to, let's look at realistically what Duke is doing.
what Carolina's doing, what are they doing at Kansas and Kentucky, and when you compare them in real numbers,
right.
Nick, you would say Jay Wright, he's one of the best, if not the best coach in college basketball.
Listen, Coach, nobody's going to deny Coach K. He's got 5 championships. He's been dominant in multiple decades. We get it. Roy Williams, since he's come to UNC, they've won 3 titles. They obviously lost a championship to Jay Wright and Villanova 2 years ago and then won a championship last year. But I just listed the entirety of active coaches with more championships than Jay. Think about where we were 24 months ago. 24 months ago this week.
Jay Wright can't get it done in the postseason.
Jay Wright can't even get to the Sweet 16s, the discussion.
We didn't even have a show, but Jay Wright couldn't get on our show then.
Right, all this talent, only been to one Final Four his whole time there. Now all of a sudden, take Bill Self and Coach Cal. Add them together. They got 2 championships.
I mean,
take Tom Izzo and Jim Boeheim.
Yeah.
Add them together. They got 2 championships. Jay's got 2 in the last 3 years. And so what that also means as far as the recruiting is because something of a self-fulfilling prophecy. He has as many titles in the last 2 years as Kansas has in the last 60 years. So think about that. If you're a 17-year-old, since the year 2000, they've won as many titles as anyone but Duke and Carolina.
You don't know any better.
Right. You're like, oh, my whole life, this team's been awesome.
It. Dominant school.
And
right.
we joke about, and you joke about, like, how suave and good-looking and cool Jay Wright is.
That's no joke.
Man, okay, you're serious, but when you're going there recruiting, like,
it's
people
important.
see the videos of Roy Williams falling asleep and Jim Boeheim falling asleep at these AAU tournaments. Jay Wright's out there, and so it's great. We're happy for him because he's a friend of the show.
Yeah.
But it's an awesome story, and the Wright team won this year.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.